welcome. We have Spanish interpretation available today. And in just a minute, you'll see a globe icon in your Zoom controls right there at the bottom. To listen in Spanish, you'll click on the globe and then select Spanish.
Buenas tardes a todos ustedes. Esta noche les quiero informar que contamos con servicio de interpretación simultánea. En un momento van a ver en su pantalla un globo. Si quieren hacer clic en el globo para poder escuchar la interpretación en español, solo tienen que oprimir el botón en español. Muchas gracias.
Wonderful. My name is Jen Boucher-Danzer. I'm the Executive Director for NAMI Yolo County. We are the Yolo County affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to improving the lives of individuals and families impacted by mental illness. Our mission here at NAMI Yolo County is to provide advocacy, support, education, and public awareness so that all individuals and families who are affected by mental illness can build better lives. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. We are very pleased to provide this opportunity tonight for all of us to learn a little bit more about cultural competence in the mental health system. We're very fortunate to have with us this evening Tessa Smith, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator with the Community Health Branch of Yolo County's Health and Human Services Agency. Tessa will be sharing with us some of the work she's been doing with the county's Cultural Competence Plan. We'll have some time at the end for questions and answers, so I will work on making sure that the chat is enabled so that you can drop any questions that you have into the chat, or you can also use the Q&A there. So Tessa, we are so happy to have you here with us this evening. Thank you for spending your time with us and sharing a little bit about the work you're doing with us. We will let you take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Jen and NAMI Yolo, for having me. I'm always ready to talk about cultural competence. I came to this organization as a mother and a grandmother and a person who's lived with a mental illness myself. I came to the work in cultural competence through being a family partner, a mental health educator here in Yolo County. And over the years, you notice that the impact that things like race and culture, identity, the roles those things play in a person's ability, well, number one, how it impacts their mental health, but then what it does towards their recovery outcomes. And so the work took a little turn as I kept trying to learn what was it I was feeling, what was it I was experiencing, what was it I was hearing from parents of children, grown and adult, and living with mental illness. So that's how I got into the work, and I'm glad to be here. So I'm going to share my screen. One last thing. Despite my background, I promise to try not to go too deep in the weeds on this, but to keep it light, okay? So give me 1 minute to share my screen. So I'm glad to be able to talk with you about cultural competence and the different ways that this work has grown, just ballooned over the last couple of years. One thing in my new role I've not quite mastered is making a pretty PowerPoint. And so I'm going to have to have you join with me really in this conversation, because there are no movies, there is no no catchy little animation things coming up. It's just a conversation between friends, okay? All right. So the first screen that I always show at every cultural competence meeting that we have is this one. And it really speaks a lot to the situation where we are now and what we're trying to do. And this is a quote by James Baldwin. And it says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And that is the new and improved, the upgraded work that we are doing in cultural competence right now. So I still want to give you a little background. Here's our agenda. We'll talk a little bit about the why we do the work, the activities, and then how we do the work. And then I've got a special invitation for you at the end. So we'll talk a little bit about cultural competence and team equity, and I'll introduce you to team equity in just a few minutes. We'll talk about some of the activities and the initiatives that are going on inside our system and in our community. Well, then we'll talk about the plan a little bit and the committee, and then we'll make that invitation. Okay, so if you have any questions along the way, please put them in the chat. I've been known just to stop sharing, just to go, hey, are you with me? I might still have to do that. So let's go a little deeper, shall we? I just want to give you a little history. Inside of our Mental Health Services Act plan, and we have a plan, it's based on the Mental Health Services Act, which is that 1% tax on millionaires that goes towards mental health services, addressing the gaps in services, and also taking care of our most seriously mentally ill community members, and developing some outreach, some community building around cultural competence. And cultural competence is an essential element of the Mental Health Services Act. So that's where my budget comes from. But I do want you to know that the state had a cultural competence mandate for its government entities long before the Mental Health Services Act, just for us to keep that in mind, okay? These really important activities are what we need to address in every cultural competence plan that dictate the walk that we walk on our Cultural Competence Committee and what we're trying to do in our agency. And so I'm going to read these out, and we're going to revisit them at the end, because I'm going to ask you how you think we're doing so far, okay? And what else you might want to see in a plan. So it's all about community collaboration. It's about client and family-driven services and systems. There's a whole wellness focus, and wait till you see how that's playing out as we exit COVID, because it's a all hands on deck thing for recovery and resilience. Integrated service experiences for clients and families. This has always been an essential work of the Cultural Competence Plan. And what I'd like to point out to you is that in past years, the Cultural Competence Plan and Committee lived solely in the behavioral health department, in the mental health department of our agency. And we'll talk about what the expansion is and why we had to go there. A little bit more. So in cultural competence, we are all about delivering culturally and linguistically appropriate services. Now, that just means let's meet people where they are and speak to them in a language that reaches them and that serves them the best. It is a mandate. It is how we have to write our cultural competence plan. Our Cultural Competence Committee informs the Cultural Competence Plan. Something happened to us. COVID happened and race happened in 2020. And the mandate inside of our agency was not just a commitment to cultural competence, but really a commitment to doing an intensive systemic evaluation to really address some systemic issues. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. But it also mandated for us a real commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion inside the agency, okay? So with the Cultural Competence Plan, this was a community-driven plan. It really was, in connection and partnership with the providers who offer services and who contract with, HHSA. But now that we have this commitment to look at ourselves and how is our system impacting its workers. So we're going to get to look at how we treat each other. But then we get to take a closer look at how is the system itself impacting clients to the good or to the negative, and what are we going to do about that? So we had to do this close look, and I'll go into that a little bit more here on this next slide, okay? In this slide, okay, I know it's kind of busy. There's a lot going on in this slide, but I really wanted you to kind of see a little side-by-side connection piece where we get to see how we get to go like that. You know, this is all different parts of our agency and community coming together. So let's look at this just a little bit. So now we have this big idea of cultural competence. We have to get it done. Then with team equity comes this internal look. So now we get to look at what is it about the way we deliver services that creates outcomes better for one group than another group. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the team equity objective and where it came from in a minute. But when we say racial equity, when you hear about it in the strategic plan, you've got to know it embraces identity, ageism, ableism, all the isms that exist inside of our agency, just like it does in our community. You know, we get to look at that and decide how we're going to have equity in staff, diversity in staff. What are we going to do and how we're going to get there? But then also, what is it about the way we're doing business that's creating some of these outcomes? It's not just that the people are so needy. Sometimes it's some things that we might need to do differently in order to create some better outcomes. So anyway, we have this agency focus, and it's about creating a workplace culture that's reflective, that looks like the community that it serves, that is culturally responsible. We know how to talk with people cross-culturally in a way where we can meet and have some really sometimes difficult conversations. In the coming months, we'll be practicing for real, though. How can we sit and be uncomfortable with each other and have an honest discussion about race and about history? Those are not easy things to do. I'll tell you my secret to having those conversations in a few minutes. So the other thing is we're all on a learning curve. You know, everybody's on the spectrum of understanding about race and about identity. I'm at 122 years old. I know I've had to do a lot of evolving to keep up with the changing understanding and to grow an understanding across different cultures. From doing my work in mental health, one thing I always put in front of people is that help needing and help seeking and help giving looks different across cultures and across identities. So what works for one does not work for another. And so that's harkening back to my mental health days, but that's why this work is so important. I would go on and on about collaborations and partnerships, but I just want to share a little bit with you about interagency programming. You know, we operate in silos sometimes. One branch doesn't know everything that the other branch is doing. But if you've got a family, for example, involved in child welfare, wouldn't it be helpful to have some people from home visiting nurses at the table, or somebody from adult mental health to be at the table when we're making some huge decisions about a family and how to best serve them in order to reduce some very large disparities in child welfare? So we are working with community health and child welfare and adult aging in a whole agency approach to raising ourselves up and educating ourselves on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And our providers have input into our cultural competence plan. We work with all kinds of folks, including NAMI, of course. Thank you very much. But also communicate with the schools, with the churches. And we'd like to see you in our committee meetings as well. We need client and family voice and choice in all that we do. So I talked a little bit about that, and I'll go back through there, but I want to talk about the cultural competence trainings that we do. It is all about improving that cross-cultural understanding that I was talking about. And I would like to say that we've expanded it. So it used to be that cultural competence was just this behavioral health thing only. Now it's a whole branch understanding. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we had shared language, shared vision, and shared goals across all of our organizations? And so now our cultural competence trainings, we call them the Cultural Considerations Series, about different special populations that we might need to know a little bit more about in order to communicate more effectively, in order to work with and alongside, or to serve better. And so we've opened those trainings up to not just HHSA, all staff, but to our providers as well, and to every member of our Cultural Competence Committee. It helps if we have that shared language, shared vision, shared goals, even though all of our organizations do very different things. And then finally, the Cultural Competence Committee. And oh my goodness, my throat went dry. But this is about how we support and engage our community members and celebrate. We get to celebrate because not only are there challenges for different special groups, there's also a wonderful, wonderful amount of understanding and community, and coming out to celebrate diverse heritages that exist in diverse cultures that are in our community. And always, again, it's about the client and family voice and choice. So I'm going to go on, but that's the big picture. So you see us all in this work together a little bit. We're not all pointy and separate little hills, but this is how the work ebbs and flows. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about what the specifics of those are. So I love this quote, and it's just simple. Diversity is about creating an environment where a person can bring their whole self to work, where you can be your authentic self, no matter what your identity is, and be respected in your workplace. It's not just about race, it's about identity, and it's about the many different intersections where we meet. And can we be respectful of each other? Can we understand each other and work with each other in a culturally responsive way? Because that's also trauma informed. And if you want me to go back to a big circle, trauma is the leading cause of mental illness. So when we say trauma informed, we're talking about our mental health and how not to hurt each other, how to help each other, nurture each other, and build resilience in each other. So I want to go in a little bit deeper on what it looks like and what some of the activities are too for this internal focus. And the first one is that we wanted to create and sustain an inclusive workplace that is reflective of the staff and the community that we serve. And this took a very wonderful shape in our early team equity meetings that we, are this hospital gray, green, whatever those walls are down there, and that same still picture of ducks, that's not inviting. It is not reflective of the diverse staff that we have at HHSA or in our community. And so we are looking at doing murals and adding art and some light to the spaces at HHSA. And that work has already gotten started. Promoting and recruiting a diverse workforce. Now, we all know, and it's not just at HHSA, but the further up the leadership ladder you go, the wider it gets. And yet, if we are going to really be committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we thought we might need to recruit a more diverse workforce, especially managers and supervisors. So we investigated places like Pink Jobs for reaching out to LGBTQ members, or there's job sites or job, what do you call them? Job posting places. You know what I'm talking about, guys. Where, where, they reach out to specific races, specific cultures, even to people with disabilities, to increase diversity in the pool that we choose from, in the hope of pulling in a more diverse workforce. Now that's going to start in a pilot program very soon. Who knew how much it costs to post a job opening for 30 days or 60 days? But we actually have the funding to do that. And so this too is in progress. And we're working very closely with HR to make that happen. Again, we have to be able to acknowledge all of our identities. And this is sounds very simple, but it's very profound when you're a member of the LGBTQ community that fights for their identity and to be heard and seen as who they believe and feel that and how they want to represent. It is abomination for, let me be careful with my words, but it is, it is that they cannot come to work and be in their, feel like they can be their authentic selves without microaggressions. Now, the same thing goes for Black or Brown staff members as well. We want to create a space where we can all be our full selves when we come to work. And it's a huge issue inside of our agency. I'm just going to tell the truth about it. But we are working on it. And that there is real teamwork going on there. That's why our equity-focused, DI-focused internal work group is called Team Equity with the exclamation point. I'm not going to take it down because that's the kind of urgency that we need to keep on this. And so that's why the exclamation point is actually part of the name. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. See, Jennifer, you almost got me going. All right, here we go. A little bit more on
I hope so, Tessa. Get going.
Okay, well, I'll be done with this PowerPoint in 10 minutes at this rate. You got me talking all fast and stuff. But a little bit more on the agency focus. And this is where you really are seeking to address some issues between staff and leadership, some systemic inequities. Now, another name for systemic inequities is systemic racism. Now, I will tell you, though, that Kenneth Hardy, who does a lot of work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, he says that systemic racism doesn't need individual racist actors. It's stuff that got baked into our cake years and years ago, long before we ever came into the system. But we come into it, we just keep doing the same thing we've always done. So we keep getting the same outcomes, and we're looking to do something different. Now, before I go through these things on the slide, this is where, that airplane analogy, and this is where I'm really proud of HHSA. The airplane analogy says, if you're on a plane and the oxygen mask drops down, they want you to put an oxygen mask on the baby first. Now, the first time I heard that, I'm like, oh no, I'm saving my babies. But then they explained it to me that, well, if you pass out from lack of oxygen, you can't help the baby. Oh, I get it. Okay, well, I guess I'll go and put my mask on. That's what's going on in our agency right now. We had to put the mask on. We had to put our oxygen mask on so that we could take care of each other so that we could better serve the community. If you don't feel good, you ain't in the business of making somebody else feel good either. And in this period that we're going through with COVID and with upside down work schedules and our kids out of school, the most well of us was not going to take that kind of strain too well. We've all gone through a tremendous trauma over the last couple of years. And so here's some things we're doing inside and for ourselves. We're going to improve those opportunities for advancement and professional development by offering real candidate feedback, opportunities for professional development so that you do have a real opportunity to move up the ladder. Now, and we're going to have that third-party grievance process to address very specifically race and gender, age, and ability-based issues. Now, that takes quite a bit of an acknowledgement because we've all heard of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and all those laws against discrimination. So what is it about the way we are doing things where this is still necessary? And we found it necessary. And so, and it's going around. We're not the only ones, just so you know, we're doing the best we can in Yolo County. And I think we're doing okay. But we need to fix that and do it in a way where our staff feels safe enough to share what hurt them, whatever microaggression it is or macroaggression it is, so that we can address it, so that leadership will offer real solutions to it and report it back out to the staff, so they know that they were heard. They know that we're going to do our best to resolve it. And that goes to the last thing. For all these grand ideas, we are truly trying to build in policy and procedures that add accountability to any processes and programming. We're going to need to measure this as we move forward. All right, I'm going to take a breath because I was talking really fast. And if you have any questions, throw it in the chat, and then we'll pick them up at the end, like Jen said. But the last thing I want to share with you about the agency focus is that we're really trying to educate on the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and communicate that expectation of adherence to a new DEI practice, to a new way that we're going to walk this walk moving forward. And so a lot of you, if you come to NAMI, you may have heard of ACEs before. Those are adverse childhood experiences that long into adulthood. Adults are still trying to outlive their childhoods because of some things that happens. It's based about trauma. It's about toxic stress. And so when we're looking at the state of our agency right now, we know that this kind of conversation is not going to be that easy or fun. And there's going to be a little trepidation. But we need to be trauma informed about how we experience it and make it an experience that we can have together and learn and heal and grow through. And this is where I was going to share my secret. So my secret to trying to get everybody to join into these DEI trainings, leadership, managers, supervisors, all staff, is to present an understanding that we are all blameless, yet responsible. We didn't create this system of inequities. We just live in it, work in it now. But the more we know about that, then what are we going to do about it moving forward? But not one person in this room or in this county created racism. None of us did. That was created 400 years ago. So we're blameless. But now when we learn a new thing, what are we going to do? That's our responsibility moving forward. And I think we can all live with that and come together with that kind of understanding. And then the second thing is that all of the participation for all staff, because we're going to train every single person in HHSA and DEIB, and the B stands for belonging. It's going to be memorialized in staff performance evaluations. So we can check up and down. Do you feel valued? Do you actually walk the walk? Do you use the language? Do you practice your pronouns? And it's, again, it's not that not any of us are going to ever get perfect at this, because things it took us a decade, 2 decades, in my case, 17 decades to learn, it's going to take me a minute to unlearn some of those things. So we have to give each other grace in the process. And that's how we talk about equity work and inclusion work inside of our agency. Oh, another thing I want to tell you, we have a whole recovery work group now, because we knew that we experienced that trauma and stress I talked about earlier, where we are concentrating on building up wellness and resilience in each other and building that community with each other, so that when we do serve our clients in our community, we're coming with it from a healed place in us. We even have the Calm app. You guys know the Calm app, where you can get rain sounds and oceans and all kinds of it. We got that for everybody in our whole agency. Yes, we did. We're trying to take care so that we can take care of the community a little better. Okay, let's go on. So I talked about those collaborations and partnerships, but I now want you to see, so before I was going like this is all of us getting together in so many different ways, crossing back and forth across our agency. But now I want you to see us like this, in a circle. So I want to just share a couple of different things that we're doing. So let's see, what does that first one say? Special. Okay, so we have special population work groups in our cultural competence plan. Now, the special populations are groups that have been identified that maybe they've been unserved or underserved. Maybe there's a language barrier, whatever, but they've been identified in that Mental Health Services Act plan. The Cultural Competence Committee then pulls and creates work groups to address the special challenges, to infuse support. So it includes youth. It includes LGBTQ community, our Spanish-speaking community. This year, we started an African-American or African diaspora work group. You know, Black people and brown people after that, but are the most disproportionately engaged in our child welfare system and in our in our criminal justice system. So there's some special programming around those things that can build resilience in those communities, and that's what we're pledged to do in our Cultural Competence Plan. We also opened up an older adult work group as well. Now, some of our members, they're members of other groups, and listen, I know none of us can be at everybody's meeting every time, but I've lost a very couple of good friends that were in the older adult work group. And so if you are an older adult and you would like to join us, we would love to have you. Okay, so there's that. And then I think I shared that we've expanded all these trainings to where members of the Cultural Competence Committee, NAMI, gets to come, and all of our community partners and stakeholders get to come to any trainings that we do. But down there, the interagency, and I'll just go just a little bit, and Jen, if I get to talking too long, let me know, because we'll save some time. But the criminal justice system and mental health and diversion programming, our county has a mental health court, has an addiction intervention court, has a neighborhood court, and 3 or 4 more other diversion courts. These are programs where we assess a person who has become involved in the criminal justice system. And if their crime was stemming out of a mental illness or an addiction, they may be considered for diversion programming. These are intensive, supervised. This includes probation, the public defender's office, the district attorney's office, mental health department, sometimes case managers, sometimes they got physical health issues as well. So wrapping services around the whole person. And that's that cross sector communication and collaboration that makes for a whole program where a lot of different needs are met. In child welfare, they have their own racial equity work group. And it's part and a privilege for me to be able to be a part of that child welfare work group as they look to address their own systemic issues, but also look at how better to serve the community and reduce those disproportionalities that I mentioned earlier. And it has been encouraging to hear them try to drill down to what's something we could do right now. And so that's really been exciting to watch as well. And then look at this. Who would have thought that we could have our cultural competence committee person, that's what that means, the DEI coordinator, actually take part in the community health improvement process, breathing equity considerations into there and pulling in other people from across the agency. Now we're not in silence. We are trying to break that down and pull all of us into all the work best we can so that it's more inclusive, more considerate. We get different voices engaged in different spaces. And I will tell you too that a few months ago when we had our quality review board. They said, "Ooh, we like that. You got everybody up in there working across the section." So we got a little step ahead there. Okay, so now this is some of the cultural considerations trainings that we've done so far. And so the first one we did was on First Nation and Indigenous peoples, how to engage, understand more about their heritage, more about things that their history, more about things that have impacted and historically been traumatic and generationally been traumatic, and how we in the mental health field can help. Now we as community members can understand better. Now we did this one, it was actually in October, but we'll be doing it again in the next several months. For those of you interested, we do many presentations at our Cultural Competence Committee, and I've invited a friend of mine to come and share with us the rest of the history, or maybe say history from the point of view of a First Nation community member, what that Thanksgiving really means. And it's sure to be enlightening. One of the other ones that we did as far as a mini presentation was we had a friend come in to do one on why remembering the Holocaust is important. But we also have done some from working with neurodiverse individuals and had Alta Regional come in. All different kinds of folks come to those mini presentations. These are the 2 or 3 hour presentations that we have coming up. The African diaspora one is actually coming up on November the 16th. Stay tuned. I'll share the information with Jen, and hopefully she'll be able to share it with you. And then early next year, we'll have a considerations training on Hispanic and Latinx, as well as the Asian and Asian Pacific Islander community. It's coming up very soon now. So these come out about quarterly. Our Cultural Competence Committee meets the 3rd Friday of every month from 9 o'clock to 10:30 a.m. And despite some technical difficulties I have had, which even in this moment leads me to send out a new link for our meeting this month, because last month the link was broken and then it wouldn't even let me in my own Zoom. But I promise I will have this all ironed out. And we will be meeting on the 3rd Friday of this month from 9 a.m. to 10:30 and have that presentation I mentioned earlier. And then we're going to get together at least quarterly in person. I get some hugs, but I like shaking a lot of hands too. We haven't done it in a while. So while it is easier to get a large group together on Zoom, we're going to have a time when we can come out and shake each other's hand a little bit. Okay. All right. Let's see. I think we've almost covered all of this here, which leads me to my next slide. Let me see. Oh yeah, so I think I skipped over all this. But now I want to share this with you. And this is my idea, not my idea, because it's already being done over in Davis a little bit and around the country. But I think I already jumped ahead and spoke about each of these groups, and I'll be glad to share a little bit on the work that has come out of each one of these groups. Maybe I'll look down, like make all those notes, and then you don't even look at them. Okay. Oh yeah, I've got one more thing, one more slide. But anyway, I just want to draw your attention first to the right side of the screen, because I love our Cultural Competence Committee, and we always have new people joining all the time. But if ever you've been to our Cultural Competence Committee, you will hear me say, this is supposed to be a client and family-driven process. And we're getting a little heavy up in here. Well, actually, what I said is most people in this room are on their company's dime. And yet, it may be harder for our folks who live with mental illness, who have families, who may not be working to come and share the needs, the challenges, and celebrations that they have in our group, unless we can make a room, make a way for to get some daycare, make a way to cover some bus fare, make a way to make the space to create an access for our community, regular, everyday community members to come and enjoy, but also to join in this process. So all of that being said, right now we have a very special work group inside of our Cultural Competence Committee that is actually taking a look at what that kind of compensation might be. What kind of stipend may we offer? What kind of gift card, or what kind of service? And what can we do? Number one, show the appreciation, but also to make that space and create that access for regular community members to come in and join us in this voice. And we really want their voice and choice. And so help me think about that. Come to our Cultural Competence Committee and help me brainstorm this out with some other committee members who are equally interested in that. I think it is a great idea, and we can do this. We can do this. And so I'll go and jump back over here, and I'll just go down these right quickly to say, in this year, we have offered many presentations on supporting transgender youth in our Cultural Competence Committee meeting. And we also offered pronoun training to all of our staff. So we've done that this year. Our Spanish-speaking Latinx work group, the first time they met, I'll tell you, the first time they met, they came back and said, there's a lot of grief in our community, and Yolo cares. So we can do a grief support group in Spanish, partnership. It happened in the first meeting. It's happening all through our meetings. Oh, well, wait a minute. I don't want to take it out of turn because I've got some more good news to share on the next slide. Okay. But anyway, so our African diaspora work group is the one group that has actually named themselves, and it is called the Umoja work group. And Umoja means unity. Now, they've been getting out into the community a lot in support of a lot of different programs that are in effect in our community. Participated in Juneteenth, participated in the Cost of Darkness with Yolo County Library, works with Children's Alliance on the activities they have in their community over in West Sacramento. So they're starting to get more organized. Our Spanish-speaking community work group did a really great job on creating partnership and putting on the joining Communicare in partnership to a table at the Dia de los Muertos celebration, which was just a few days ago. And it was great. It was really well attended. Okay. So now I think I told you about our older adult work group. We had some great members who just sit in other spaces on that particular Friday, but who have really shared out some rather dynamic needs and challenges for our older adult community. I would like to have their voice in our meetings. And I just can't be the only older adult in the cultural competence meeting. Come on, be with me. Okay. And then always we have a Russian speaking work group. Now, when it comes to cultural competence, when it comes to understanding the history of some cultures and why their attitudes towards mental illness are not like ours, where there's no openness, no willingness, no understanding, a lot of judgment, one of those. That happens in a lot of different cultures. We really struggle to keep relationship with our Russian-speaking community. And I even know 3 or 4 words of Russian, but I don't get to ever use them, So we would really like to build outreach with our Russian-speaking community. We had a friend of ours do a really great cultural considerations when working with Russian and Ukrainian peoples. And it just so happened, because I watch the news, probably too much news, but about 2 or 3 weeks before this current strife broke out back in March, I'd already made arrangements. And so right when the war hit there, boom, you have this training. And now you can understand a little bit better about the history and about how so many people who are Ukrainian have Russian family members, and a lot of Russian people living on the Russian side of things have Ukrainian family members, and how traumatic that is, how traumatic that is. And so it was fortunate, as unfortunate as it was, that we could be able to understand better how to reach out and understand the trauma to our friends and to our neighbors there. Okay, I think I got one more slide to go, okay? Oh, here's some more activities. So we have these cultural considerations trainings, and you saw them come out every few months. Next year, the PACES Connection training, DI training is going to roll out for leadership starting January the 18th. And then all staff will be rolled into that starting around in March or April. So we have all of those, and we're layering it with the cultural considerations trainings as well. And so again, these are a few of the other activities that we did. And I mean, this is just the ones I could think of as I was on my way to sleep. Well, on my way to sleep. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that out loud. But anyway, the other night, but so I mentioned the Cost of Darkness documentary that we did with Yolo Library. We also did a calling in, calling out culture. That's cancel culture. Presentation we did at the District Attorney's Youth Justice Leadership Academy for young people, because it is still a thing that we're people who can't agree, just want to vote somebody off the island because they said something a little wrong. Now we have to figure out we're going to stay in conversations, even hard conversations, without casting people out. And so that's the work we're going to really double down on next year. Okay. So we tried it out with the kids first. They could get it. So I know we can get it too. They could get it. So I know we can get it too. All right. Now these next two, these were just very simple ideas, that came out. And I heard that communicator had done a brake light repair event. And what a great idea. What a simple thing that is to fix people's brake lights. And a police stop, because a traffic stop like that can be a kind of hazardous thing for Black and brown people. If you know Yolo County statistics, I mean, it could really be a hazardous thing for Black and brown people. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. And I reached out to NorCal Resist. And do you know, we've done two. We did one back in January. I think we might have served 49 families, maybe did about 18 brake lights, something like that. But they just roll out there, and wait till you hear these numbers. They just roll out there. It's free brake light and headlights. They'll take all that fog off your headlights. If a bulb needs to be replaced, we've been doing them over in West Sacramento at the old Safeway in the parking lot. So the property manager there allows us to do that there. But we're right by an AutoZone and an O'Reilly's or something like that. And they just run over there and get the bulb, come back and put it in. So people with really, those 20-year-old Beamers and one of those with the bulbs, good night nurse, how much they might cost and stuff. But they just go over there and then fix the headlights. But NorCal Resist and Brown Issues rolled in at our last one, which was September 17th. They served 74 distinct families, 329 individuals. You would have thought the fair had come to town. I mean, it was just, cars and families everywhere. And NorCal was just rolling in with van loads of diapers and fresh fruits and cleaning supplies. And I'm like, well, my God, that's partnership. And so while, I feel sometimes I got my hands full, because there's not a lot of there's no full-time staff with me doing this, but that is us in action. That is our Cultural Competence Committee getting the word out and sharing and resharing and sharing and resharing the information that we share in the Cultural Competence Committee. So that's so huge. It's so huge for us to be in this work together. So, and then with our expungement clinics, we did the first one. We got 29 people with the process started. We did one, I think it was August the 4th. We did one 39 people. And I'm going to tell you, when we did the first one, and I'm not telling on my friends because they are truly my friends at the public defender's office and the district attorney's office. I mean, they came, in a little late, and said, we've done these before. One time nobody came, and then one time maybe 2 or 3 people came. We had 29 people the first time. We had 39 people in August. This is us. This is us. This is what comes out of the Cultural Competence Committee and all of us doing the work together. So those were the 2 really big deal things I thought for us when we started being able to actually do something that made a difference, that could really impact some people's lives. If you've got something, if you've got a record, it's going to be hard to get a house, hard to get a job. And we had 2 sets of families come in with little babies in the little infant chairs, who were both the mom and the dad, as something that they needed to get off of their record so that they could move on and have a more resilient life and be thriving and create a better space for that baby. So when we look at serving people and their mental health needs, we got to look at all those things that impact their mental health. Where is that toxic stress coming from? What can we do that can genuinely help them thrive, create an opportunity for them to thrive? And those are the ideas that come out of our Cultural Competence Committee. And we need some new ideas. And so I have a little, what do I need? I added this back in there because I've been talking for, I don't even know how long. It feels like 2 days. But here's the thing. I took this slide from the beginning because I know I shared a lot of information with you. But remember what I said our focus was internally and externally: community collaboration, client and family-driven services and systems, wellness focus, recovery and resilience, integrated service experiences for clients and families, serving unserved and underserved populations. And I'm just going to let all of us take one deep breath because I know I talk really fast. Just take a deep breath and go. And I'm going to ask you how we do. What else do you think we need to be doing to serve our community and be culturally responsive to help us thrive? And then I'm going to ask you to remember this. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And that's a quote by Margaret Mead. So I want to invite you to come join us at the Cultural Competence Committee and get a little knowledge, share information about your organization, your family, what you saw going on in our neighborhood that you want us to do something to assist or build up or otherwise promote. Okay? And with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for your time. And then I'll turn it back over to you, Jen. Oh, take this. This is me, Tessa Smith, and there's my email. But I put down here the Cultural Competence email. If you want to register for a training, find out when the next training is. If your organization is doing something and you want to get the word out, hhsa.culturalcompetency@yolocounty.org. And then you can call me anytime at Tessa Smith at Yolo County. All right. Now I am done.
Oh, Tessa, thank you so much. That was so wonderful. And I'll tell you, I was taking some notes as you were talking and picked up a couple of wonderful little Tessa gems. We don't have any questions in the chat right now. So if people have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If you don't have a question, but you have one of a Tessa gem that you're taking away from this presentation, feel free to put that in the chat and share that with us as well. Tessa, I really, I loved a few things you said, when you said that we're all blameless, yet we are all responsible. That really struck me. That is was such a just great way to phrase that concept.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that one. And the other one I really loved, and you were quoting someone else, I think, that systemic racism doesn't need individual racist actors. I think that's so important to remember, that, you know, there are systems that have been in place that we are coming into and working in, that were created to benefit some of us and not others. So those were two really great gems.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Things really have gotten baked into our cake. And I first started the Cultural Competence Committee. I was trying to explain that concept. And, you know, when you think about things that got baked in your cake, you know, when you have a bite of cake, you don't just taste the sugar and the butter and the flour, you taste cake. Unless there's something funny in there, and then you go, what's that? And that's what we have to go through our system and take, you know, what is that? And decide what we're going to do about it, you know?
Absolutely. Well, I really, I want to emphasize again what Tessa said to our participants here this evening, that, you know, her invitation to join the Cultural Competence Committee, it's a wonderful committee, just a great group of people. And I think that, you know, we certainly would welcome more in that group and would love to see you there. So please consider, if you have some time available on Friday morning every so often, we would love to have you join us there.
We absolutely would. Thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, Monique, we would love to have you be part of the committee. Make sure that you have Tessa's email address. And if anyone needs Tessa's email address after the fact, you can always reach out to us here at Yolo County, and I can put you in contact with Tessa. Well, I'll drop my email address into the chat here as well. So thank you so much. I don't see any questions in the chat yet. So I think Tessa, you answered all of the questions we didn't even know that we had. So.
Well, you know, when I get to talking, I tend to, but I do see several friends in the audience, and there's a little group of us that tend to run in a little bit of a pack. We need new blood. But I appreciate you all for being here this evening. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, before we finish up this evening, I'd like to invite everyone to take just a couple of minutes after we're finished here to complete our event survey. The survey should appear on your screen after we close out the webinar, and it'll also be sent to you via email after the webinar. So if you can just take a couple of minutes, it's a very short survey, and send that back to us. We would really appreciate it. So here at Yolo County, you may be aware, or you may be new to the organization, but we offer free support groups and education courses, both for those living with a mental health condition themselves, and also for family members and loved ones of those living with mental illness. So you can find more information about our support groups and our classes on our website, and Sadie's just dropped that website into the chat for you. We also have a variety of volunteer opportunities available. So if you're interested in learning more about how you might become involved with Yolo County, please feel free to drop me an email. My email is execdirector@namiyolo.org. You can also email friends@namiyolo.org if you need to contact us. One specific upcoming opportunity we have for volunteers is to help provide a holiday meal for residents who are living in one of our local supportive housing communities. So we're looking for volunteers who would like to prepare a homemade item for the dinner menu that we will be serving on November 17th. So we'll drop a link to the sign-up form in the chat, or again, you can reach out to us at friends@namiyolo.org for more information. The residents of the this community really value having, monthly meals to get together and socialize, but particularly a homemade meal. So it's really meaningful as a volunteer opportunity to be able to contribute in such a way that means a lot to the people who are on the receiving end. And which reminds me, another gem that I took away from Tessa this evening was that that help seeking, help needing, and help giving looks different across cultures. So Tessa, thank you again for giving me so many great gems of yours this evening. It really was just such a pleasure to have you here, and really wonderful to have all of our participants here this evening as well. Thank you all so much for being here, and I hope to see many of you at the next Cultural Competence Committee meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. It was
fun.
Thank
you, Tessa. Wonderful to see you as always. You have a lovely
evening. As always. I had such fun because you keep a smile on your face too. And I was just looking at you and it helped me just keep smiling on through.
Well, we just appreciated your presentation. And Tessa, you always bring just such wonderful energy. You are, it's interesting. I was reading a quote today from Barbara Kingsolver, the novelist, who was talking about the difference between hope and optimism. And that I wish I had the exact quote in front of me, but it was, I really loved it, that, hope is kind of, putting a little something aside for the future, that in the hopes that we'll have a little bit better future down the road. So you definitely bring not just optimism, but you bring hope, and that is really just incredibly valuable. And I think that we can all use a little extra hope in our lives these days.
Indeed, indeed. What great things are coming for us who stay in the struggle. So absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me, Jen. Absolutely. I'm glad I had all my internet didn't blink out, or it was just great.
It was great. Yes. Oh, thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. And I hope to see everyone hopefully in person one of these days soon.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Bye-bye now.